Good morning. Good morning, Daily Huddle family. It is Tuesday where my co-host, Catherine Sable, and I talk all things communication and relationships. And most mornings when we kick this baby off, we have a tendency to say, I'm so excited about today. And so I'm not going to say that today. I am going to say that I am over the moon, all jacked up about our guest today. Ben Gioia is a treasured friend of mine, one of the few people whose email lists I stay on and look forward to his work and his writing and how he shares his work with this beautiful mindfulness that is so authentic. So I'm going to tell y'all a little bit about Ben and his brand new book that I read over the weekend, and I cannot recommend enough. So let me share a little bit about Ben, and then we will get down to a juicy conversation. If you haven't met Ben Gioia, he is a 4-time international best-selling author, podcast, and radio host. And his teachings are used by more than 80,000 leaders and game changers around the world. He helps folks write great books in as little as 5 weeks, enjoy 5-figure speaking fees, and attract 6-figure consulting fees. Ben has a new book, and he is right here on the Daily Huddle to share the magic that is in the book called The Influencer's Formula, the simple way to create a global thought leadership masterpiece with a podcast, book, or get this, TV talk show. In the book, I love the fact that he debunks the biggest myths, mistakes, and misperceptions around entrepreneurship. I love that, and he's going to share that today. He also says that now is the ideal time. It's easier than ever to create a global thought leadership masterpiece and amplify your message while elevating your business. Ben has trained hundreds of now millionaires in his 39 years of consulting, writing, and publishing. And 2 of the coolest facts about his career, which I want to share real quickly, and one is a guess. So he helped launch the world's largest magazine, and I'll see if anybody knows what that is when we're finished. And he also won a Patient Services Award from the ALS Association for creating their first mindfulness program, which I love. So I could go on, but I do want to say good morning and welcome from Spain, Ben Gioia.
Yeah, Tara, thank you so much. And Catherine, thank you so much. And everyone else who's joining us live and also in recording, thank you all so much for being here and caring enough about yourselves and your business and each other to spend some time together this morning or afternoon or evening, wherever you are in the world.
That's right. Well, we are delighted. I want to say that when I read this book, it really made me believe that there could be a blueprint to getting your voice out there, really fine-tuning your message and putting it behind the written word, thanks to this book. So I'm beyond fascinated. But tell us a little bit about the inspiration behind the book. Why did you want to write it?
Yeah, thank you so much. So I think some of it is, that's my 4th book, and I wrote it for the first time with a co-author named Donna Cundy. And yeah, I've written several books, and I can't not write books, I've noticed. I always feel like I have something else to say. So that was certainly part of it. And as Donna and I became friends and became colleagues, she helps people create podcasts in a very clever way. She has them do a global radio show first, a weekly global radio show for 13 weeks. And then people record those shows and it gets released or made available in 184 countries, which is, I can't even name 100. I don't know how many countries I can even name, right? But all over the place. And then she takes each of those episodes and splits them up into 4. So the radio show host all of a sudden then has 52 podcast episodes, right? So just this whole idea of leveraging content, making use of content in such a smart way, in such a compressed and compacted amount of time, I thought was really smart. And Donna and I started talking and looking at her process and looking at my process. And we went, wow, we're kind of similar in how we do things. And we both figured out that, hey, if you do your book right, and for me, when I say right, I mean, if you dial in your book in a way that's going to definitely serve your ideal clients, then, and write the book, of course, then you have created like 80% of the content for a podcast. And vice versa, if you create your podcast the right way, dial it into your business, you've created about 80% of the content, pardon me, for the book. And Donna and I went, wow, and if you do those things together, right, you can have an entire platform really, really fast. And we're not specifically saying to people, oh, you have to do them together, right? Because that might not be right for everyone. We don't want any of us to drive ourselves crazy because we all, we're all busy enough anyway. But just whatever that choice of, whatever that sequencing, let me say, is that makes the most sense for people to do that and to not wait, right? Because there are people out there who need our messages, like you gave voice to, Tara, that now it's easier than ever because of technology, because of publishing, that mere mortals like us have access to, and and the world needs help. I would say more than it ever has before, and we get to do that.
It's beautiful. You mentioned something that I read about in your book. I'm already going off script here from the questions, but we'll get back to those. You mentioned this in your book, and I just loved it because in such a generous way, to me, what I heard was don't make excuses, but you said it in a very kind and loving way when you reference the fact that people say they don't have time.
Mm-hmm.
You say
yeah, thank you. Thank you. So, and I appreciate you picking up on the subtlety of that because I really do my best to push people forward without alienating them. Right. I do this with my
very
clients.
kind.
Yeah.
And I caught it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. And with books, especially because this is, my area of expertise, I've come to understand and practice and teach that time is not an issue with books. That doesn't mean it's not going to take some time. That's not going to mean that there's not going to be some level of commitment and activity and some rough spots. But if you think, in a kind of leveraged, optimized kind of way, there are a couple things you can do that are really, really smart for your book. And I'm talking here about books that support your business, or a book that supports your business, positions you as an expert, right? Helps you get clients. This is not so much for like a memoir or a novel, right? This is, a business book,
right?
That if you first and foremost have conversations with your ideal clients about the book you're writing, and this is something I teach a specific method to my authors, you get the understanding of where to focus the book, what language to use, what's most important for people, AKA your ideal clients, what's not so important. And then from that, you can also figure out what stories to include in your book that support the things that you're teaching. And if you're extra smart about it, and this is something I help my authors with too, you can use that conversation where you've gotten all this great feedback about your book to then allow it to be a bridge for that person to become a client or a strategic partner because you've started that relationship with them, right? So first and foremost for me, it's like make that lens or give yourself the gift of that lens. And then another big thing.
I love that. I just want to break in here and
Please.
Shift the perspective for our listeners a little bit, because when we think about our business as an entrepreneur, we think about going out and talking to prospects. But what you did for me in this book is you flip the perspective, and all I'm doing is going out to potential clients, but I'm really going to them for their expertise. I'm interviewing them for my book. That's all I'm asking. And most people will not turn that down. Am I right?
You're absolutely right. Yeah, a book is a brilliant tool for opening the door to conversations. And in this kind of context, it's a collegial peer-to-peer discussion instead of, hey, can you tell me about your challenges in your business? Because I might try to sell you something, right? It's like, hey, I'm writing a book. I want to write a great book. Would you be willing to offer your perspective of your experience around XYZ topic?
Yeah. Okay, I want to dig into some of what you're going to share with us today. So thank you.
Pleasure.
You reference one of the biggest mistakes that people make with brand, attracting clients, and making an impact. What is that biggest?
Some of it is I can just kind of reiterate what I just said, is not taking the time to speak to your ideal clients about the thing you're creating, whether it's a book, a podcast, a presentation, a keynote, a course, kind of, insert whatever word you want to insert there. Because so many people who are experts, and all of us in the room, so to speak, are experts. The mistake happens when we say, okay, I'm an expert, I've been helping people, my method or my process or my framework, it works. So I'm going to put it in a book and the book is going to work. And that usually doesn't happen, right? Because we miss out on that bridge between what can we offer and what are our people looking for, right? Because what they want and what they're looking for is not necessarily what they need, right?
Right.
We often know what they need, but if we walk in the door saying, "Hey, this is what you need," very often the response is like, "I don't need Jack. Don't tell me what I need," right?
Yes,
So
absolutely.
yeah.
Yes.
So big,
Know what they
big,
want, I
big.
guess, but we're here to help them get there.
Exactly. Yeah, and part of that is, as a result of that inquiry, is or that lack of inquiry is not having the language
Mhm.
to use where people are describing their stuff, because we as experts, we help, dozens, hundreds, thousands, depending on, what our models are, of people, in a particular way. So we integrate all of that learning and we describe it in a way that we describe it as the expert. And very often we're not using that on the ground language that our customer or client or ideal client is using. And then there's a disconnect because they don't think we're talking to them, even though we think we are.
Makes so much sense. I think about some of the people that I consistently read, who've put out, I don't know if you would say Brene Brown's books or business, but she certainly serves some of the biggest corporations in the world. So I'm thinking like Dan Pink, Brene Brown, Malcolm Gladwell, Adam Grant. Their books, Dan Pink just especially, but their books are full of conversations that they're of basically doing exactly what you're telling people to do. Is don't think that you have all the information right here in your one little noggin. Go out and talk to people that you want to serve. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's exactly what you're hearing. Yeah, when I had done one of these big campaign of outreach, I'll call it that, before I wrote my third book, and I probably spoke to 65 or 70 people, 20-minute conversations. Hey, I'm writing a book about this thing, and asking people about their challenges and goals and stuff, essentially around writing a book. And it probably wasn't until conversation number 42 where I heard something that I didn't hear before, which was so revelatory. And it wasn't just one person's perspective, it was something that a lot of people didn't even understand, or it wasn't really on the, in the top level of their consciousness, that a lot of people hesitate or don't complete their books or don't even want to get started, and they can't always articulate this because they're scared of the whole publishing process,
Is he
right? It's
cutting
like the
out for you,
iceberg
Catherine?
that's under the water and you can only see that little bit, right? And there's this, am
Is
I
he
cutting
cutting out
out?
for you?
Oh,
Yeah, a little
Yeah,
bit.
kind of cutting.
am I
Maybe you want
back?
to cut off your. I hate to ask you to do this, but just see if it helps if you cut off your camera. I don't. That's the only thing I know to do. Just for a minute.
No, no worries, no worries.
Okay,
Yeah,
let's
yeah,
give that a
sure,
minute. I
sure.
definitely want your
Um,
live face back on here in a minute, but I want to hear what you have to say even more. So
yeah, thank you.
yeah,
Yeah, just the that so many people, that they, without realizing it, fear the publishing side of writing their book. So they often don't even get started writing the book because of this thing that's way down the line that they're going to have to deal with eventually. And a lot of times they can't even articulate that. Right. And this was one of the big things that I discovered from having a bunch of these conversations that I had never come across before. And then as I started having conversations with people and understanding that more deeply, more and more people were saying, yep, I have no idea what to do. That terrifies me. So it really changed the game around my process and around helping people understand what was possible.
could you kind of condense, because I'm not even sure I totally grasp the mindset of you. You talk a lot about podcast. This
Mhm.
is what I am understanding. You can start with radio, you build all this content, and you have a podcast almost ready to roll.
Mhm.
But the podcast world, well, it feels like so saturated and competitive. So what do you say to someone who has that fear that they're going to do all this work, put a podcast out there, and they get 6 listeners?
Yep. So kind
Mom,
kind of
dad, brother, sister, and aunt.
right. Exactly. We have 5 listeners. Similar to what I was just saying about the books. Talk to your ideal clients about the thing that you're creating, about the podcast, right? And focus on your ideal clients, because if you focus on your ideal clients and serve them, understand where their challenges are, where you can support them, use their language, then you pretty much guarantee that your podcast or book is going to work, right? So instead of creating the thing and throwing out there and going, okay, does anybody like this? Right? Don't start there, because
Okay.
that mistake has been made too many times in human history. Right? So if we come in the angle of having these conversations, not only are you getting the clarity for the podcast or the book, but those people you're talking to, like I said before, can potentially become clients or strategic partners. Like, why not generate revenue on the way? Why not get speaking gigs and other partnering opportunities on the way to creating something that's going to work for your best people?
That's fantastic. I want to dig a little bit deeper into going out and talking to these potential clients, by sharing something that I've faced, and see if you have similar experiences or a warning sign for this. And it's been my experience that if you go out and you talk to, let's just say for me, it's HR directors about the typical things that they're facing today with the company, what the challenges are. I will get pretty much the same 1 or 2 issues from every HR director. And I'll also get the response that the problem is fill in the blank. Therefore, there's not much we can do about it. And
Mhm.
we got to dig past that to get people to believe that they can actually affect change. And I wonder, in your research and going out and talking to clients, if you have any strategies to get past that.
Yeah, thank you. So on those calls, what I tell my authors to do or not do, depending on how you want to angle this, is not to coach, not to try to solve anything, right? Just to ask a bunch of questions, be curious, be investigative, right? And then be a good listener, right? Because so much of the benefit of those conversations comes from you being a good listener, right? So many people aren't listened to enough in their lives. So if you go talk to your ideal client and ask them a bunch of good questions and just listen, they're going to love you, right? They're going to think you're great just because you've been a great listener, right, first and foremost.
Mm.
So then going to deeper into your question, what I say to my authors and anybody who will listen, basically, is that the primary function of your book, and this can apply to a podcast too, depending on the approach of the content. But for these kinds of books that I coach people with, right, the primary purpose of the book is to help your readers shift their beliefs and perspectives into what's possible, right? So to debunk the biggest myths, the biggest misunderstandings, to help them move from disempowering beliefs to empowering beliefs, right? To contradict conventional thinking about the topic, to validate why people misunderstand or are thinking in a way that's not so positive. The example I often give is like, if you grew up in the 80s, or you remember your parents in the 80s, right? Everybody thought fat was bad. Fat is bad for you because that was on TV and it was in all the news and all those kind of things. And it turns out it's not true, right? Or at least the right kinds of fat. But because of that whole cultural and media misunderstanding, and perhaps some lobbying by some certain interest groups or another, my mom still drinks blue milk, right? Skim milk.
That's hilarious. It is. It used to have that blue tint. I don't know if it still does. I remember when my mom switched, we went 2%, then we went skim. Now I have almond. I'm telling what my kids will drink when I'm gone.
Exactly. Yeah. And that, because if we don't debunk the myths and help people move into the thinking around what's possible, no matter what we try to teach them or show them or reveal to them, is not really going to make a difference because they don't think they can do the thing anyway. Right. So going back to your HR people, on that call, on that investigation call, you're not going to try to talk them out of that, but you're going to say, hey, at some point, hey, I have this process that can help turn this around or take a new angle on this, and let me show you how and why it works and why historically it doesn't work for most people and where this entrenched thinking is, and that there is a whole set of new possibilities available to us today.
Yeah, I love it. I also find it effective to ask people for specific examples, i.e. stories, because that all brings it to life. And those are things that you can change names and share in writing that, that make it very, very real. I do want to ask you before we talk about the gift you have and open this up for questions, one last question, and that is, if you had 1 minute left to live, what would you share with the world?
Oh my goodness, that's such a great question. I would say take your shot, whatever that is, take your shot. Absolutely do it, go for it, because you don't know when you're going to die. Right. I was a hospice volunteer for a few years, and there was often that, one of those, maybe you've seen the memes of the top 5 regrets of the dying, and one of them is in some language or another, like, I didn't do my thing, I didn't take my shot. So take your shot and love the heck out of yourself and love the heck out of everybody else, even if they drive you absolutely crazy. Because
Oh, it's so beautiful. You reference throughout the book, you tell people to breathe and smile, which is so unexpected. Um, and I know that you've been practicing meditation for, I forgot how many years, but you spent over 130 days in silence. How does that, how does that influence your life and your work, your meditation practice?
Yeah, thank you. That it's really foundational. Like it's the core to all the things for me. Yeah, yeah,
To all the
and
things. I love it as a
all the
quotable.
things. Yes, that's a very very technical term.
Yep.
Yeah, so uh, so the Buddha, the historical Buddha, was a pretty smart dude, right, to say the least. And what I'm about to say, doesn't matter if you believe in God, don't believe in God, what this is just around practice and what we can do for ourselves. He taught something amazing, and he taught that the most important thing we can do is keep relaxing. And I don't mean like, keep having a cocktail and laying down relaxing, but just that whatever we encounter, whether it's things we like or things we don't like, right? Like there's a kind of charge around it. There's judgment, there's reaction, right? There can be story and all those kinds of things. So to not get hooked in either direction, right? The invitation is to relax. The Buddha, the language he used was, the tranquilizing of the bodily formations, right? Which sounds kind of official, but it's basically like, don't let the good stuff get sticky, and don't let the not so good stuff get sticky, because the whole universe is just unfolding however it's unfolding, trillions of times a second. I mean, we can't even comprehend what's going on, right? So the best way we're going to be able to engage it, ride the wave, and be at peace the most often, is to not chase after stuff and not push stuff away. How do we do that? We just keep relaxing, right? And then take it one step further. Especially we think about book writing. You go to write a book, you go to share your message, take your stand. Invariably, it's going to stir the pot,
Right.
right? And all sorts of things are going to come up, and some of these are common for us, some of these are unique. But fear, shame, doubt. Do I have anything to say? Is anybody going to listen? Self-judgment. All these kind of things. None of that is personal. Like, it feels personal as heck, but none of that is personal. You didn't ask it to come up. So what do you do with that? You can either fight against it, which doesn't work, right?
Mhm.
Makes it more painful, makes it last longer, or you can practice not getting involved, which can be really hard sometimes depending what we're navigating. So going back again, smiling, relaxing, what my teacher taught to relax your head, relax your face, smile, and just come back and take another breath, right? And just keep
Beautiful.
letting that go.
Thank you so much. I really love the fact that you wove in that this is not about religion. Like
Mhm.
in the Book of Joy, the Dalai Lama and the Archbishop, so much aligned there. So I'm glad that you pointed that out. There's so much science about meditation. You have a gift for us, and if you'll tell us about it, I will repost it in the chat.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, so uh, I talk a lot about guaranteeing that your book will work. If you're going to write a book, you want to guarantee it to work. And part of that certainly is what I've talked about today, having conversations with your ideal clients. And there are a few other things that are really important to look at, to think about, to consider when you're bringing forth your book. So, this gift is a 25 question or 25 phrase assessment to help you understand if your book is going to work or what you think of your book right at this moment. Will that work? And based on your answers, you'll know where you might be lacking, where you're excelling, where you might have to fill in a gap or two. So, none of this is for self-judgment, self-criticism, anything like that. It's just a really good assessment of like, okay, what is this going to work? Do I have to think about this? And then some considerations that will automatically be inspired by the
Thank you.
phrasing and the invitation.
That's exciting. Thank you.
Well,
Catherine, I'm sure that if we had another 30 minutes, you'd have a lot of questions, but I don't
My
know.
gosh. I know, and I've just been soaking this in, and it's fascinating. I think what keeps coming to me is like you're describing if it all works. Like I have an idea, I go interview my potential clients, and I get all this great info, and then it just works. How do you when it doesn't work? Because you're describing like you're going to run up against different things. How do you know when to pivot? Like maybe this isn't the right. I'm not hearing the things that I thought I would from these people. Like how do you know when it's time to shift?
yeah. I give my authors 10 questions to use for those conversations, right? And the 10th question is an invitation to take some kind of next step. And it's not suddenly a sales question, but it's just basically, hey, after I finish the book or after I publish the book, whatever introduction, if I decide to do, let's say, a workshop on this same content, would you be interested in joining me for that, or is this something that would support your organization, right? So something of that ilk, right? You're not selling it at that moment, but you're just getting the sense of, would this person or this company want to take a next step, under the umbrella of this topic. And if you talk to 10 people and the majority of them say no, then it would be really a good idea to rethink the topic of your book. And it doesn't mean you have to completely overhaul the topic of your book, but you might just shift some of the perspective or some of the approach
Mhm.
or who you're delivering it to. Because when the majority of people say yes to that 10th question, number one is those can become clients or workshop attendees or whatever the case may be. But number two, that's kind of the acid test of, hey, am I on track with this topic of the book that I'm sharing with these people?
That's great. I love that because you don't get to your 99th interview and realize, oh gosh, like this. So you're like constantly doing sort of a sense check on it. So that's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
This is so inspiring. I love this conversation.
Absolutely. I'm so glad to have you back here. You went quiet for a minute. We're really right up on time, but if you just want to leave us with some final words of what you might say to the world about standing out and sharing their message, then we'll close it out.
Yeah, do it. There's nobody like you. There will never be anyone like you again. Only you can bring your message, your perspective, your wisdom, your experience, your hard-earned wisdom, all of those things to bear. And that is the greatest gift you can give to the world. And, we have an honor and a privilege and an opportunity like pretty much no one ever in history. And most of the rest of the world can't do or will never have the opportunity to do the things we get to do. So, why not do the heck out of it and see where it takes you? Because
Love it. So
What a life.
inspiring. And if people on YouTube are watching this, they won't see the chat. So how can they find you?
Thank you. So influencewithaheart.com is my website. Once again, influencewithaheart.com, or look me up on LinkedIn. My name will be somewhere around the video, I think, and you can see the spelling of my last name there.
That's right. Mr. Ben Gioia, we thank you so much. And particularly, I'm going to lead into the way we close every Daily Huddle out with our tenets. And the first is love. And you absolutely lead with love. So thank you for that example. You also lead with generosity. So very giving. We thank you for that. We've had some laughs. We always want to take time to laugh and not take life too seriously. It's so good for you. And we want to take care of our bodies. That means to get sleep, to, as Ben says, to relax and stress less. Eat more plants, mostly plants, and get up off that booty and move that body. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Daily Huddle family. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, everybody. It's a pleasure.
Excellent.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.